Thank you. Okay. Busy agenda today. So, Dan, you have the first few items if you want to start.
Yep, I'll get started. So I wanted to just bring to everyone's attention the OKRs that we're trying to hit right now. The main focus for us is MRs per engineer per month. I'll share a quality dashboard link in the document so that we can all get to it, but you can go check that quality dashboard. If you can't see it, let me know. Everyone should be able to see that. So it's really meant to just be an average. We've all talked about doing smaller, not faster. So but, we can keep talking about it. And, our process that we're coming up with is the next, the third one that I'll move into here is supposed to help contribute to that. So overall, I just wanted people to be sort of thinking about that as something we care about. And we'll have a look at the quality dashboard and we can follow up with that. And the other thing I wanted to address, the third thing at least, is the regular virtual coffee chats with other team members. It's something that I've mentioned a few times with peeps. I think it's important, particularly in Gigi's case, who's likely watching this after the fact. Hi, Gigi. To just sort of stay in touch. It doesn't have to be every week, maybe every other week. Some cadence that actually works, but like try to actually set those up regularly. I know, Tim, I think you have them already with Gigi. So Nick, I'd like to actually set one up with you and Ian and, actually try and stay in touch with people so that we have a bit of a connection. Sound good? Sarah isn't here, so I'll read for Sarah. Sarah has a NPM dependencies tag in dependencies support, and she's been working on this MR for a while. We're starting to get a little bit of pressure from customers, so I made a comment on the MR a little while ago about, we can't, because Sarah has a normal life job, like where she actually gets paid from it. We can't expect her to be committed to delivering this, but she's super close. So I don't know if you have Steve, you have a little minute to look at that and see if you have a moment to try and give her a hand and help her get that across the line. I think it might be in review, but definitely be worth giving her a hand with that if you have a minute.
Yeah, I've been working with her for on and off with it, and she asked me to take a look at it before it goes in for review.
Awesome, thank you. And Ian's not here either, but Tim, I think you probably have a better chance of giving context around this item that he has, if you don't mind reading.
Yeah, I think we could punt this until the next meeting when he is here. But yeah, basically Ian wanted to give a 5 or 10 minute overview of the findings from the user research that we've been doing for the container registry and what we're going to do moving forward. I'll save it for him. So maybe next week we could go over it. And then the next item is mine. So yeah, one of the things that came up during the coffee chat with Gigi was I thought we were going to switch these meetings like every second week or something. We were going to push them to, there's Ian. Every second week we were going to push them to a time that could work for Australia.
Yeah, we actually have our retro pushed on Thursday afternoon this week.
Okay, cool.
What happened was he mentioned that to me, and I was like, yep, okay, I'll go move a meeting right now because I'm going to try to increase the frequency. What I did is accidentally move the wrong one, but I didn't want to be spamming everyone emails going back and forward. So that's why I didn't then fix my mistake and then do it a different way. I was like, okay, this will still satisfy for that. So yeah, agreed.
Okay. Steve, you're up next.
Thank you.
Goodness, I am so unprepared. I'm so sorry, guys.
You can.
So yeah, Ian, jump in if you guys have a chance.
Sorry. Can you hold up a sec?
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, we'll come back to yours at the end. Let's just sort of finish where Steve's at, if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry, guys.
No worries. Thank you.
No worries. Yeah, mine is more of just a question of kind of like something I've noticed is, just like how should we prioritize when we've got, work in the current milestone versus there's many other pieces, in other milestones, future or even past. And sometimes that can be blocking work for people on the team. So how should it be prioritized when you've got, something that's blocking someone versus something that's on the current milestone, assuming that, if you were to help out unblocking or with, helping get something done, but it's not in the current milestone and it's going to like take a while. How should that be prioritized with like current work? And I just ask it because it's, I don't like saying no when people ask for help.
Well, I've got to start off by saying no is an excellent skill to have. It's something you should certainly get good at, because there's certainly more things that we could possibly do than we have people and or time. So you have to learn to figure out what your top priorities are. I mean, as far as helping people unblocking, I'm not sure. We can talk in generalities, I suppose. But I think it's easier to talk about these things with specifics of what scenario. So whether that's helping Sarah with her MR, helping get some of these community contributions across the line, and sort of the way I look at that is they're all community contributions. If they're not within our team, they might be GitLab team members, but they're part of the community if they're contributing to our code base. So how do we help those people best get that work done? Now, it's in my head, at least, it makes sense that anything that ends up being a community contribution isn't in our top priorities, because otherwise we'd be working on it, right? So I think in a general sense, I would want to say we want to spend at least some time per week helping with community contributions. Now, it may be like the Composer MR that one of our community members has contributed, for example, is not something we're expecting to get done, but it's already in review and there's a lot of work going on with it. So maybe we don't need to help a lot there, but it's worth keeping an eye on. So I would set aside a little bit of time to actually do that per week. I don't have a number in my head, but I don't mind spending a couple hours. Like if your wall-to-wall work, 100% of your time is your active work, then we probably need to make sure you have a little bit more free time so that you can contribute, because the community contributions are really important. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Tim?
Can we talk? Is there a real example that we can give that might help? Because it seems, I just don't want to like abstractly, yes, like, yeah.
I guess I don't really have any specific examples. It's just like there have been one or two times where I've been like, should I help with that or should I continue working on my thing? Like, I don't know. Like, it's kind of just that.
What did you want to say, Nick? Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a real example that I was going to ask about when it's not quite ready yet. So basically, I've done a bit of work on sorting the package registry list, and that involves some back-end changes. So my plan was that I was going to ask, you, Dan, if I could borrow some of either Steve's or Gigi's time to discuss the back-end changes that I've implemented and whether or not they're like suitable, good, bad, whatever. So yeah, there's a possible real life scenario coming up relatively soon.
Yeah, and I think from if I put my manager hat on for a second, my answer would be, well, you'd have to ask Steve and Gigi whether they have time to finish the work they've committed to this month, or for this milestone, because it's not, my job is to help set priorities and give context. And if Steve, you feel like you can complete the work that you have without assistance and you can get it all done and you're going to have time, yeah, go spend the time you think is necessary to give Nick a hand. Once those sorts of things come into our priorities from product or from, like discussions we all have with Tim, at that point, it's like, okay, now we need to allocate someone. But up to that point, I would say that Steve and Gigi are at liberty to decide what time they can give to you or Sarah or community or whatever. Community is a little different just because we do want to allocate specific time to that per milestone, per week. So I think that would be a little different. So yeah, I would chat with Steve. If it's a Rails thing, chat with either of them. So yeah, I think you're good to go. Just talk with them and figure out if they can contribute time. They probably want to see what you've done, give it a little look over and decide how much time is involved for them, and then sort of allocate time accordingly. And that's totally fine with me because we made commitments about specific things we're trying to deliver. What's your experience in this case, Darby?
It's a good question. On release, I think we're maybe in more of a unique place because the community stuff we get is mostly focused on pages. And and we actually have like an incentive for being involved in that stuff because our team doesn't have a lot of Go experience, and so the people that are working on pages like want to get involved in those community MRs because that helps them level up on their Go, and then also helps like add features into the product. And so we've been spending a little bit more time focusing on that stuff, just because it sort of supports like bigger initiatives on the pages side anyway. In terms of like other community MRs, I think we spend a little bit of time on it. I really do think like every team is different, and depending on like how many folks you have to look at stuff, I suppose probably where package is at right now, you probably have like bigger objectives that need the focus, unless like that community stuff is driving towards one of those goals. But I don't know. It's a bit of a balance to try to get like you don't want to like alienate people either. But I do think that there's, in my experience anyway, the expectation around community, like the feedback loop on community contributions is typically much slower, so we get to it when we get to it. I actually saw like this whole Twitter exchange with DHH over the weekend where someone was like complaining about this PR that they made into Rails like a year ago and hadn't been addressed, and his comment was like, it's best effort. We get hundreds of contributions every month, and so we do what we can. So I think it's got to fall in line with priorities, and I think it if it makes sense to dig into something, go for it. But if it's not really aligned with like, especially in a small team where you guys are trying to go, then it can probably wait. It'll be there later.
Yeah, I think, Steve, do you want to go into our shared board and just open an issue on this so that we can talk through it? In my opinion, really, it's up to you. If you feel like you can complete everything, you have spare time to help, go ahead and help. I think it's important. In our case, the community contributions we have are directly in what we're trying to do. Now, they're not right now priorities. Otherwise, again, we'd be prioritizing them. But like Composer, and then we've got Ruby Gems, and then we've got a couple of other tools. So would you mind doing that?
Yeah, of course. I think like the overall I'm getting is that, like certainly try to make some time so that we have that conversation with community continuously open. And then for like inter-team and cross-team stuff, it's sort of just like at your discretion based on how much time you have. And if you really don't think you have time, then maybe talk about your own like assignments and priorities, because it might just be that that's not as balanced as it should be.
I'm always happy to, if you feel like saying no, but don't want to offend someone, or you want some backing, I'm always happy. You could just CC me, and I'll be more than happy to say there's no time. This is what we're working on, and jump in. So it feels like in most cases you could probably say, oh, I don't have time for that now, I'll get to it next week. But if it feels like you don't want to do it, you could just add me, and then I'll take care of it.
Yeah, and I think on that note, I would say if you see something come in that you think is worthwhile, escalate it to the whole team. Let's all talk about it and decide if it's a priority. If you feel like you need support, absolutely, as Tim said, I'm happy to back you up, but I don't think you need it. I think you can easily say to someone, no, I actually don't have time for this right now, and my priorities are these things. If you say to someone, I'm going to get back to it next week, you're making a commitment to get back to it next week. So like, don't just palm someone off at some distance, because that's easier to deal with. Like, really be careful about, I can commit to getting back to you on this date or next week, later in the week, and I'll follow up with you. Let's make specific commitments around those sorts of things rather than just sort of palming someone off into the future. Does that seem reasonable?
Yep.
Was that satisfactory for you, Steve, on that point?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. So Ian, sorry, I just wanted to continue in the flow there. If you want to go ahead and raise your issue now, that'd be awesome, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about kind of barreling in here. I wanted to take an opportunity to share some of the results of the research Tim and I have been doing. I like to make sure we do this as a team just so that everyone can get the context of where we're coming from with certain aspects of priority choices and things like that. Starting off, Tim did a bunch of research, interviewed 8 different individuals, focusing in on kind of the retention policies and garbage collection for images. We had interviewed 8 people. All of them were engineers, which isn't really surprising. So I can go into kind of the detail of that if you'd like at a later time, but I want to give you kind of the highlights. I also added a link in the agenda if you want to go through and see kind of what the synthesis notes were and the details of the process we went through. Really what I want to go through now and kind of on a regular basis is the learnings highlight reel. These are kind of the high level points that we learned or we thought were interesting that could kind of impact how you're thinking about building the product. So I'll just go through those real quick. First off, we got great validation that retention policies and garbage collection is a feature our users want. That was 8 for 8 users, which is pretty unusual that all 8 people committed to like, yes, this is the thing I would use and this is the thing I want. So it's always kind of a wonderful experience to have that validation from real people. One interesting thing was the end result of everyone's retention policy was basically the same thing. There are kind of a collection of sacred images and packages that we want to make sure are utilized and are safe and protected and stable that everyone should be using. And then there is a whole bunch of other images and assets and artifacts that are created on the side as part of commits and merge requests that get used once and then never really get used. So they want to be able to remove all of the junk and then keep these kind of sacred things. Users are going about it in very different ways to kind of get that end result. But it was interesting that the goals kind of felt the same. Something that popped up for me was the CLI. I was kind of surprised to hear that a quarter of the people we talked to use the command line to interact with packages, whether it was creating them or pushing them or even just viewing the details. So we should probably pay attention to what that experience is like as well as the GUI. Let's see, what else? Couple more. Images and packages are being created at different rates and scales across different organizations. Some are generated once a month as part of an overall release cycle. And then on the opposite side, there are teams that are making new images and new packages multiple times a day. So users are kind of experiencing a broad range there. This was shocking to me. Users are measuring their registry sizes in terabytes and petabytes. That is just a massive amount of storage, considering how small an image and a package should really be. So that was kind of just shocking to me. And the last thing was that one of the things that I think we could offer as a product offering as opposed to some of our competitors in the package space is a lot of users had a lot of interest in what branch made a specific package or what merge made it or what pipeline made it. So we have an opportunity to kind of directly link them back to what they're trying to figure out. Where did it come from? How was it built? So it's kind of a different perspective from what like JFrog and some of our competitors do. So that's it. I just wanted to share some highlights. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out.
That's super cool. Thank you very much for that, Ian. Really interesting. Do we have like a sense of the skew, like a bell curve of what the sort of data usage is? Because in my head, at least, I had understood that there are very few customers, i.e. us, that are using petabytes of data, like actually really huge. What's that look like?
I don't know if we have enough data to really get that kind of factor. We only talked to about 8 people. A lot of users didn't have any idea what size it was because it was just kind of part of the rest of the size. But the ones that did know were dealing with that tera and petabyte area. So those are the ones that I think we need to watch out for because they're the ones experiencing issues because our registries are becoming so large.
Nice. And so one of the things I think Tim and I spoke about a while ago was that a lot of people were interacting a lot with the package and container registries via CI. Is that true based on your research and your viewing of the interviews?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Only one user that I remember specifically called out using an alternative method. They were manually pushing images using Docker up to the registry. Everyone else either kind of mentioned or alluded to or just boldly confirmed that they were using the CI pipeline to create these images. There was definitely a strong correlation between the ones that are using the CI pipeline and the ones that have a lot of extra artifacts that aren't getting used. So that's a detail we should pay attention to.
Nice, that's cool. I don't mean to dominate the question time, but does anyone else have questions? That's really awesome. I think it's one of the things that we all have to be thinking about right now is how we're instrumenting and collecting metrics around our area. One of the things that Tim has definitely realized. Well, you realized this a long time ago, I think, Tim, but it's certainly come up. It's bubbling up the priority list pretty quickly. Is that we need to be instrumenting our stage so that we can report SMAL. Stage monthly active users, and we're not able to do that right now. I did add an issue last week, but being able to have this data to support what Ian's doing and what Tim's doing and what we're all doing is like really important. So I think we're going to have to really come up with strategies here where we can start adding something to help us collect this data. It is a really big deal for the organization. So definitely added an issue on that. I think some of that data could be helpful here, Ian, rather than just sort of talking with 8 people. We can then get a much broader picture of what people are actually doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of the next activities we have coming up is a survey to kind of answer that question. So instead of asking 8 people, we're going to ask, 350 people, just some kind of statistical questions. Another initiative that's going on right now, and I mentioned this to Tim recently, is that GitLab is trying to implement Pendo to kind of gather user data, so that given that we're at an early stage, we might be able to get some really good coverage quickly as the rest of the company is trying to implement that feature, or that tool, excuse me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I don't have any more questions. Is everyone else?
Ian, were there any other opportunities that maybe from the research that you identified or things that surprised you or piqued your interest?
There were quite a few opportunities that, I was kind of surprised that they were things that people wanted. One was being able to link back into, what file ended up building this artifact, what pipeline built it. So there were some surprises there. Some features also included users would use garbage collection if it was available. So this is a feature that they can use the API for. So being able to surface that. There's a couple of little things. My next step is to really go through the insights and the issues that have already been created and finally kind of go through that backlog and create new issues based on the insights.
That makes sense.
I just noticed that we didn't take any of the notes that we were talking about just now, myself included. So we have to be a bit more disciplined about recording these notes in our document so that when Gigi goes to watch the video later and other people watch the video, that they're able to follow along. And the big pointer there is the document's searchable, the video is not. So if people are interested in the things we're talking about. So I failed on this one, I apologize, but we should all be careful to take notes on what we're chatting about, the questions and whatnot. Otherwise, this has been great. And we're like 2 minutes from time if anyone has anything quick. Otherwise, we can wrap up. Good. Awesome. Thank you, peeps.